Good morning, students. Welcome to English class. In today's class, we are going to learn a new lesson. Before we move on to the lesson, let us discuss what is discrimination. Discrimination is the act of making unjustified distinctions between human beings, that is, differentiating human beings based on the groups, classes, or other categories to which they belong. That is, the discrimination is on the basis of race, that is, whether they are black or white, the gender, that is, male or female, then based on age, religion, as well as other categories. What is racial discrimination? Racial discrimination is any discrimination against any individual on the basis of their skin color or racial or their origin. So here the individuals are discriminated by refusing to do business with, socialize with, or share resources with people of a certain group. Is racial discrimination legal or illegal? So it is an illegal practice. Our IPC criminalizes the use of language that promotes discrimination or violence against people on the basis of race, caste, sex, place of birth, religion, gender, or any other category. Name some leaders who fought against discriminations in our country. So they are Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru, Dr. Ambedkar, and many other people. Who fought against the racial discrimination in South Africa? It is Nelson Mandela. He said that no one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. So let us move on to our lesson. It is So What Are You Anyway by Lawrence Hill. The story is about racism and how some people discriminate between people of different colors, the whites or people with lighter skin looking down on colored people, especially the blacks. So in this story, Carol, a little girl, was traveling with Mr. Henry Norton and Mrs. Norton in an aeroplane. They had noticed that her skin tone differed from theirs. So they would not stop asking Carol about her racial identity. They asked outrageous questions in an arrogant way. When none of these questions got her to tell them what her race was, Mr. Norton could not hold his patience anymore. So he directly asked Carol, "What are you anyway?" He meant to find out what her racial identity was. The story starts with Carol, a young girl, settles in seat 12A in the plane. Carol travels herself to her grandparents. She was seated with the couple Henry and Betty Norton. She was described as a milk chocolate, which means that she was a colored girl of mixed parentage. Mr. Norton sat beside Carol, and Betty Norton was sitting in the aisle seat. Aisle means a long passage between rows of seats. Mr. Henry Norton was very rude to Carol. He held her doll upside down and commented on it being black. He didn't allow her some space on the common armrest and looked her curiously, making her to feel uncomfortable. So Mrs. and Mr. Norton were probably people inquisitive by nature. So the fact that she was traveling alone and was carrying a black doll might have aroused their curiosity to know her whether she was white or black, and that made them wonder what her parents were. But Carol saw Henry as a person, a big man with a sunburned face. She was innocent and she didn't know their intention, while the couple was disrespectful with their questions. Now, as Carol felt sleepy, she closed her eyes, but the clinking of the silverware woke her. But since she heard the discussions between Mr. Norton and Mrs. Norton, and she came to know that they were talking about her, she didn't open her eyes. So now Henry woke her and asked if she wanted to eat. But Carol replied that she wanted to go to the bathroom. And after returning from the toilet, she asked the stewardess. A stewardess means a woman employed to look after the passengers on a ship or aircraft. So she asked the stewardess if she could sit somewhere else. But the stewardess replied, as they were serving a meal, they don't have time to move her now. So, as Carol felt uncomfortable with Mrs. and Mr. Norton, she asked the stewardess to change her place. Since the stewardess were serving their meals, they could not move her to any other place. So, after the meal, Henry asks Carol, "What are you anyway?" So, after Carol had eaten and had her tray taken, this man was asking her, "What are you anyway?" Carol could not understand what Henry asked. She blinked and dropped her head. So, again, Henry Norton asked her, "What race?" So, since Carol didn't understand what Henry asked, she dropped her head. But one thing she understood was the man was asking a bad question, and she wished that her mom and dad were there and they could tell what race mean. Comprehension. What does milk chocolate imply? It implies that Carol is a colored girl of mixed parentage. How can we make out that Henry Norton is being rude to Carol? Henry Norton is rude to Carol by holding her doll upside down and comments on it being black. How is Carol introduced? Carol is introduced as a innocent and who thinks of herself as a young adult. What is Pillows of Cotton? Why does the writer call it so? What is Pillows of Cotton? Why does the writer call it so? The writer is referring to the clouds as pillows of cotton. From the plain, the white clouds look like cotton pillows strewn all over. Why were Mrs. and Mr. Norton curious about Carol? The Nortons were curious about Carol's ethnic origin. They had noticed that her skin tone differed from theirs. So they would not stop asking Carol about her racial identity. So that is why they were curious about Carol. Why did Carol grimace? Henry referred Carol as a child, but Carol thought herself as a young lady, so she grimaced. What did Carol ask the stewardess? Carol asked the stewardess whether she could sit somewhere else. From the questions Henry asked Carol, what is he trying to find out? Henry is trying to find out her racial identity. So, homework, read page 25, 26, and 27 and write the synonyms for the following words: aisle, instant, tux, chuckle, grimace, frowns. And make sentence: grimace, frown. Write the antonyms for the following words: forget, curious, whisper, stewardess. Thank you, students.